Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast. Here with your hosts, Jacob Smedley.
Sam Betts.
Justin Reedhammer.
And Nathan Romanov.
Our topics today include baseball off-season is in the midst of it. We get an update on some signings, some trades. Sam will give you the very latest on the moves happening during the off-season, and the NFL postseason is here. We will do a little recap of the end-of-season madness, the postseason matchups, and some predictions for the games moving forward and the college football playoff. The new format we discussed last time is coming to a tumultuous end with two teams battling out for the final game. We will give our prediction and recap for that final matchup. Now, here's Sam Betts. Sam, what's going on with baseball here in the offseason? We're just about a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting, but there's a lot of moves to be caught up on, Sam.
Yeah, Jake. And like I usually do, I always go through all like the little details and stuff like that. But to not like make sure Justin and Nate aren't too bored, we're
Stop
gonna
the
go through.
presses. Stop the presses. Sam is changing it up, everyone. Go
I'm
ahead,
changing
Sam.
it up. We're gonna go about 20 minutes so that no one loses their mind. And we're just gonna go through some of the more important ones. Everyone's kind of laughing and smiling.
You're lucky Peter's not here.
Hey, it's all right. It's what I do. Just kind of keeping it a little bit varied here for our sweet podcast. Let's start with a big one here. We're gonna go with the Dodgers, World Series champions, but that's not stopping them from making some big moves. They got off to a real big start, signing Blake Snell to a 5-year deal worth $182 million. Blake Snell, he's a two-time Cy Young winner, both in the American League and in the National League. Kind of had a very weird season with the Giants. Pitched in 20 games. He did post a 3.12 ERA, over 104 innings with 145 strikeouts. Didn't look too bad, but kind of we saw some glimpses of him kind of losing his command. Wasn't really as prominent, but the Dodgers kind of wanted to take a big shot at this guy. A lot of the Dodgers rotation has kind of dealt with some kind of ups and downs too. Still having a very strong rotation, a lot of depth to it. Losing some guys in this offseason who we'll talk about a little bit later, but really just kind of reinforcing it and keeping that Dodger starting pitching depth that they usually do with a very profound pitcher who's had a lot of success.
Yeah, I think that it's a great move for the Dodgers, and I think of course, stacked roster. Everyone's saying that they just coming off of a World Series, but I think one area that you kind of saw some gas leaking at the end in the World Series was that pitching rotation. Of course, Ohtani, you have no idea what he's going to look like coming back from Tommy John. Yamamoto pitched great, but Flaherty was a free agent as well. Glass now was hurt, so of course, the rich get richer, and you have a Dodgers team that adds a Cy Young caliber pitcher, and of course that deferred money again, Sam. They were able to kind of push off some money for him a few years, but I mean now you're looking at a rotation with him, with Ohtani, who's most likely going to pitch again, Glass now, who's going to be healthy, Yamamoto, and they're still in the mix for some other free agents, including another Japanese phenom that's set to come over as well.
Rentaro Sasaki is very much in the mix there to be part of the Dodgers. And just some other inconsistencies with Bobby Miller, who was a pretty good rookie, kind of had a down year this year. Clayton Kershaw does re-sign with the Dodgers, but again, he's getting old. He's had some injury concerns, so definitely locking up a pitcher like Blake Snell is a plus for this Dodgers team. And they didn't stop there. They also signed Tommy Edman to a contract extension worth 5 years and $74 million. They got him from the Cardinals in the trade deadline trade they made this year, and he definitely made a big impact, especially in that championship series. Again, just another kind of position player. The Dodgers just kind of building up their team again, not looking to slow down after that World Series win.
Yeah, and then when you get a guy like Tommy Edman and what he provides with the position versatility, and like you said, Sam, I mean you could make the argument their best player in that NLCS. He won NLCS MVP against the Mets, and adds just so much versatility, like you're mentioning, locking up him. I'm sure you'll mention it as well. Teoscar Hernandez going back as well. I mean he was so productive. And, they're finding a way to pay these guys. They don't care how far they go through the luxury tax and into the fourth and fifth, levels. Yeah, paying that extra money, paying that extra tax. I mean, they're here to win a repeat. They're here to be one of the, top three teams in the league and kind of set the pace. So, I mean, finding ways to bring these guys back is incredible what they're doing.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, they signed Oscar Hernandez, 3 year, $66 million deal. I feel like they're able to sign guys like Tommy Edman, Oscar Hernandez to I mean, they're significant contracts, but maybe lower contracts, because these guys want to go win another World Series, and they want long term. These guys want long term deals, and they want to win more championships. They want more recognition. Teoscar Hernandez was an All Star Game selection, and he won the Home Run Derby title during the during the All Star break as well. And he also performed really well too. Like these guys could go anywhere, ask for a lot more money, ask for a lot of big contracts, because they did perform. They did show teams that they could perform. That's why the Dodgers are kind of keeping them happy, giving them a decent amount of money, and also giving them long term deals because they know they're going to perform that for that Dodgers team. Why don't we just break out the one of the biggest signings, or the biggest signing of this offseason. We'll talk about it right now. Juan Soto, the $765 million man for 15 years, going to the Mets. Wow. That's
Yeah,
all. That's all I can
speechless,
say.
speechless,
That's all
Sam.
I can say. I can't even envision what $756 million looks like. Juan Soto, superstar in the MLB, had a career high 41 home runs and 109 RBIs for the World Series losing Yankees this year. Hit 288, on base percentage of 419, OPS of 569. Only 26 years old, so you're going to have him till he's 41. The Mets big money bag Steve Cohen wanted to kind of put out for this team. Made a couple other signings too. Signed Clay Holmes from the Yankees as well. I saw some reports of them looking to make him a starter or add him to the starting rotation too. They signed him to a 3 year, $38 million deal, and they also went out and got Frankie Montas on a 2 year deal, who's shown himself to be a starting pitcher. Has had some ups and downs with injuries. Did have like a steroid issue where he got suspended for a decent amount of games 1 year. But I mean, this guy, he's still looking to prove himself. So definitely getting out. Going out, Mets kind of trying to build up their roster after making it to the championship series. But I mean, with Juan Soto and that amount of money, they went out and they definitely wanted to lock up their superstar for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the whole conversation leading up to it was, Yankees, Mets, those were the final really two teams that it came down to in the end. And, he decides to go to the Mets. Of course, there's the conversation with the money involved, but something that, Juan Soto brought up in his opening press conference is he's very intrigued about the future of this Mets organization. And, of course, we're Phillies fans here. We support a division rival, but just kind of watching from afar what Steve Cohen and this new ownership has kind of brought to this Mets team that, even last year had really down moments where you thought, this is a team that looks defeated in the middle of the season, but the clubhouse, the culture that they have there in Flushing, New York is showing that, a premier top 10 player in the game is willing to, sign really most of the rest of his great baseball days to play for that organization. It just kind of speaks volumes. And then you mentioned the other signing, Sam, the pitching depth. That's kind of how David Stern operates things, the former, general manager of the Brewers, those kind of smart veteran signings, bring those guys in. And I'm intrigued to see how that Clay Holmes works out. Had struggles as a reliever with the Yankees. What can he do potentially moving him into a starting role? I mean, they can run a 5, maybe 6-man deep rotation. They also brought back Sean Manaea, who pitched phenomenally down the stretch for them. Re-signed him for multiple years. So they got pieces. Kodai Senga, who's still there, coming back from injuries. So they are going to be the cream of the crop in the National League, I think, and also the league. As Nate is disagreeing. Nate is upset. He is visibly upset, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't say much as you all know during the baseball segment, but this news was the biggest news of the offseason. You couldn't avoid it when it happened, and I'm just gonna say this: he took more money to go to Little Brother in New York, go to the NL, where it is going to be significantly harder to get to a World Series than it would be if he had stayed in the AL with the Yankees. So, in my opinion, just looking at it, I don't know what it was. I mean, you said clubhouse, locker room culture, and what they're trying to build with the Mets. But if we're being honest, he went to a more difficult situation than it would have been with the Yankees. I think he took the money over a championship because the way I see it, the Mets, they can compete, but it's the Dodgers' time right now, and the NL overall, I think we all agree, is just a more difficult league to compete in out of the two right now. So I didn't really get it, but I'm a Phillies fan. I'm a hater of the Mets.
No, it's a risk. I'm not saying it's not a risk.
Yeah, and I wish nothing but failure for him and that organization when he is there for the next 15 years or whatever it is. So that's all I have to say.
Nate, wow.
Oh man.
When you're gonna give someone that amount of money, it's very hard to say no. But I think also the Mets they must have made a very good pitch to him that said like over his career they're definitely going to build up the team. They're going to, which they've kind of shown a little bit already now. They're kind of trying to build up their team. They don't have a first baseman right now. Without Pete Alonso, is still kind of out on the market.
Could move Mark Vientos there and sign a third
They
base. Could.
do, but
Could.
Brett, I know,
Whatever they're
but
doing.
but Brett Beatty is also there too. I know he's more of a third baseman. I know Mark Vientos is also kind of like that middle, like that third base, middle infield, like first base kind of thing. And Mark Vientos did kind of show some flashes of having kind of that star potential, that starting potential, but they may be rocking with him. A couple first basemen have already gone off. Christian Walker signed with the Houston Astros already. He was probably one of the bigger guys on that list. So who knows? Off season, there's still some time before spring training. There's still been moves happening. Paul Goldschmidt signed a 1-year deal with the Yankees, so he's kind of off the table right now. Who knows? Maybe the Mets kind of have something else up their sleeves. We'll go to this one here. This one I thought was kind of interesting. Willie Adames, formerly of the Brewers, signed a 7-year, $182 million deal with the Giants. Willie Adames, last season he hit 251, had 32 home runs, 112 RBIs. Very good defensive player. Was added to the Giants lineup. He's been a pretty solid player throughout his career, both with the Rays and the Brewers. The 7-year, $182 million deal is interesting.
You think it's much? I see you think it's much. That's the face, the
I think
vibe
that's
I'm
a
getting from
lot.
you,
I think
Sam.
that's a lot for Willie Adames, to be quite honest. I think he's a really good player, but I think this is another. I think the Giants have kind of had a history of kind of reaching for some players, kind of reaching for some guys who they want to kind of like take control. especially kind of like more recently to try to kind of help this team boost. Giants are always kind of in like a conversation like they're a playoff team. Like 2021 we kind of saw them like they had that they kind of had that chance. 2022 they were kind of like talked about a lot, but they've kind of just fallen short. I feel like this is the Giants just kind of like reaching a little further than just to kind of try to make like a playoff spot. They also very recently they signed Justin Verlander, the 41-year-old starting pitcher, to a 1-year deal. He's been pretty well. Kind of had some shoulder and neck issues this past season, so didn't really look like his 40-year-old version of himself when he played for the Astros. But they kind of wanted to go out and get the guy who's just kind of been dominant throughout his past couple years of pitching, even going into his 40s, has his late 30s, early 40s has still been pretty dominant. So this is the Giants just kind of trying to kind of get over that hump, and it's going to be really hard now with the Dodgers kind of signing all these people. The Arizona Diamondbacks also kind of now in the mix. One's going to the World Series in 2023, obviously losing out to the Rangers, but still very much in that mix in that for the playoffs there. So again, kind of Giants just trying to make some moves here.
Yeah, Sam, I know you don't like the contract, and I think that might be masked by the fact that they've missed so many kind of these big names. Of course, the whole Arson Judge, where Aaron Judge had thought he was going there, he wasn't. Carlos Correa, it looked like he was. Then the failed medicals, they even, put a pitch out to Bryce Harper when he was a free agent years ago. So I feel like that's a little bit masking, what Willie Adames brings to the table. And he does has some flaws. He goes through some slumps at the plate, misses, chases the high fastball. But, he's a guy that can, steal you 20, 30 bases. He can hit 20, 25 home runs. Of course, in San Francisco, they're a bit more of a pitcher's ballpark, of course. But, I think this is a good move. This is showing that Buster Posey and the new kind of regime there in San Francisco is going for it. Justin Verlander, kind of hoping for that bounce back. Don't know how much he has left in the tank after that injury. It, is I saw kind of Talking Baseball, talk about it a little bit, where it was like a low risk, medium reward is what they were kind of saying. And I kind of feel the same way. You hope he's a sub-4 ERA guy, but maybe at the very least just a veteran presence for those young arms. But, I mean, that is a gauntlet of a division. We just mentioned the Dodgers, and you brought up the Diamondbacks, the Padres. Both of them still have, star talent on there. So it's going to be tough, but I like that they're going for it. They're making moves. They want to improve their team. They're not like these other teams that are just getting outbid and, sitting on their hands and content with the team that they have. So I appreciate that, even though, Sam, you might not agree with the contract for Willie Adames.
There's so many that we could talk about, and this might go longer than 20 minutes, but not too much longer. We'll talk about Max Fried. 8 years, $218 million. He signs with the Yankees after being a pretty prominent starting pitcher for the Braves playoff teams, even winning a World Series with them in 2021. He posted a 3.25 ERA in 29 starts, had 174 in the third innings with 166 strikeouts. He's been a pretty dominant pitcher over kind of this past like 2019 into the 2020s. Again, I think this is the Yankees kind of trying to build up their team too after just being in the World Series, trying to kind of bolster their roster as well. And I think they definitely did. With him next to Garrett Cole, it looks pretty good. The Yankees did also make another move to kind of bolster their bullpen, trading for Devin Williams, giving up one of their left-handed pitchers who they've had on the team for a couple years now, Nestor Cortez and minor leaguer Caleb Durbin. Nestor Cortez obviously wasn't safe. He's kind of had some ups and downs. He's performed pretty well, but kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit. But getting Devin Williams to kind of bolster the back end of the bullpen, getting Max Fried to kind of replace Nestor Cortez and make their rotation even stronger. Just kind of really focusing on the pitching here for the Yankees, which was an issue for them in this World Series.
Yeah, I think the Max Fried move, you mentioned it, Sam. I mean, he's a workhorse. I mean, he really just started to have some injuries the past year or two, but other than that, he's been throwing 150 plus innings every single year, and you add that to Garrett Cole, you add that to the other pitchers that, Clark Schmidt, a young arm that they have, Carlos Rodon, who, seems to now be even forgotten in the mix. He was their other big, starting pitcher signing a few years ago that has, dealt with injuries, even though he, pitched well enough to kind of be on that postseason roster. So I like that move. And Devin Williams, I mean, I think it was kind of a buy low, the Brewers kind of selling high. He had that, meltdown, if you will, against the Mets in the wild card, but he's still a top three, I think, closer in the game, and what he can provide throughout the season. Did deal with some injuries last year, but you add him, you can move Luke Weaver around, who really had a great resurgence into that closer role. He can be maybe now a setup guy. He can be that guy that you can throw in tight situations in the middle innings and then still have, Devin Williams on the back end. So I like that. And also, you mentioned Goldschmidt a bit earlier on, but him and Cody Bellinger, who they traded for with the Cubs, even though they lost Soto, all of these moves, I think they're getting better, well-rounded play. You get Goldschmidt over at first, you can put Bellinger in center, move Judge over to right. You're getting a bit better defensively. I know Juan Soto is like I mentioned earlier, top 5 player in the game, but you have a handful of really good players that you're adding to the mix. So I like what they're doing in on the other side of New York.
Yeah, Jake. I mean, Yankees, they're not the New York teams in general aren't holding back. Since I've kind of go over my time, I would just kind of want to go rapid fire, couple last couple things. Red Sox making some quick moves, signing Patrick Sandoval from formerly of the Angels to a 2-year contract worth $18 million. Also getting Walker Bueller 1-year contract. Definitely had some injury issues last year. Just still looking to kind of be that guy that he's kind of been promised. He's definitely shown flares of it from his rookie season onward. Had a couple injuries sometimes, very much looking to see him perform and hopefully performing very well for this Red Sox team. Also getting Aroldis Chapman to 1-year deal, bolstering that back of the bullpen. And he actually had a really good year with the Pirates. So just kind of really looking for him to improve as well. Corbin Burns is going to the Arizona Diamondbacks on a 6-year, $210 million contract. I was really hoping the Orioles would kind of pick him back up again, kind of look to bolster their team because the Orioles just kind of need a little bit more to kind of push themselves. Made it to kind of that wild card round this year wasn't enough for them. Was really hoping they can get Corbin Burns, but he decides to go to the desert, for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm trying to just look real quick, see if I'm missing anything. Dodgers signed Korean infielder Hae-Sung Kim to a 3-year deal. Reports kind of showed that Shohei Ohtani kind of had a little bit of his hand in this.
Yeah, they did play. They did play the Korean national team, I think, in Seoul, South Korea, I believe, at the beginning of the season in the Seoul series. And I did see a clip that he was on that opposing team. So, like you said, there could have been some conversations there. But yeah.
Yeah, he signed a 3-year, $22 million deal, and that Shohei Ohtani may have even convinced him to take a little less money than he was kind of hoping for to come to the Dodgers. And we'll mention this really quick. Kyle Tucker to the Cubs, probably going to kind of replace Cody Bellinger in exchange for Isaac Paredes, who had a really good season for the Cubs. Hayden Wesneski and Cam Smith. Jake, that's pretty much all I got. I think. Oh, well, we'll cover Garrett Crochet. We'll talk about one last one. Garrett Crochet to the Red Sox. The Red Sox really bolstering this rotation. I mean, with these trades, in exchange for Kyle Teal, who was a first round draft pick, I believe in 2024. if I'm wrong, but then a couple in a package of other prospects too. Now, Jake, I am done. It's now football's time to shine.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to hold off, Justin, for one moment. I think those are great moves, Sam. I think the one that really sticks out, interested to see Kyle Tucker if the Cubs re-sign him. I think he'll have a great season there. But, yeah, the Corbin Burns one, just to pick one out that surprised me. I thought he was going to go to the Orioles. The Mets were also in play there. So surprised about the Diamondbacks, but that's going to be like we mentioned earlier, a really good team. Sam, you went over. You're fired. No, you're not fired. You're staying around. Justin is done waiting. He is frustrated. His wait is over. Justin, the NFL playoffs are here. How did we get here, though? The last time we talked, we were still in the regular season. We were still talking about surprising teams, and now we're in the playoffs. Justin, take it away.
Thank you, Jacob. You're right. Last time we talked, it was such a long time. What, 10 weeks ago? Like two months at this point?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Last time we talked, nothing was set. Nobody was in the playoffs. Everybody was still vying for a spot. Now we're already through the entire AFC side of things, and the NFC is currently playing at the moment, so we're going to get into all of that. But I want to take us back a little bit here because, Jacob, I remember last time we did the podcast, you mentioned to me that I was celebrating about the Bills being at the top of the division, taking a victory lap. Well, at that point, it wasn't official, but it is now, so I will take a victory lap here. This is my victory lap. So, I as you know, I received a lot of criticism of how the Bills handled their offseason from all of you and much of the media. But that all culminated in our division predictions, where, if you remember, everybody picked against my Buffalo Bills. So I just compiled a couple of quotes here real quick of things that you guys said.
Oh, wow. Here we go.
A little surprise for you before we get into the action. Jacob, you said I think they're going to be around 10 wins, but I'm going to go with the high-powered Dolphins offense.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cam was worse, actually, because Cam... he picked the Jets and then the Dolphins over the Bills. Everybody else picked the Dolphins over the Bills. He picked the Jets first, saying that he thinks the Bills would go 9-8 and that the Jets were a more complete team.
Yeah, that's a bad beat.
See how that went?
Yeah.
Justin really kept receipts.
Oh yeah. You no idea.
He's getting everybody.
Oh, yeah.
These people aren't even here to defend themselves.
Oh yeah, Joey said
taking everyone
the Bills
out.
are not winning this division. Sorry, Justin. The losses are just too much. Yeah. Peter just basically said I'm along the same lines as Joey, so I'll count that. But Nate, you're my favorite one. Nate said,
Of course I am.
Nate said the Dolphins are a better team this year. All right, they just are. They have a more complete team than Buffalo. The losses are just too much.
I did say that. To be fair, and I think to me and Jake, if Tua hadn't gotten hurt, I think that we'd probably see the Dolphins in the playoffs this year.
They'd be in the playoffs.
I will stick by my guns.
They
They'd
would
be in
not
the
have won
playoffs
the
this year.
division.
I'll give you that. But they would have been a better team.
They would have been a better team. But, you guys said some dumb things about the Bills, but I also said some dumb things too. I just wanted to go over a few of those to be fair. I said the Dallas Cowboys would have a tied record with the Philadelphia Eagles. That was foolish.
Okay,
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
And
but no one could have expected that. Like, I mean, the Bills, the Dolphins, I don't know, the Cowboys, just they're far from
that was
grace.
crazy.
I mean, yeah.
And then I also said, with the uncertainty at quarterback and the offense in general, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will be sitting at 4th. I think we were all along that same line. So, I mean, that's more all of us, but, I feel bad about that.
Just goes to show that none of us know anything at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Well, except when it comes to my division, I know everything. You guys.
Yes.
Listen to me. But now let's move on to the things that actually matter, which is the NFL playoffs, which I did want to point out a cool stat that I actually fished around for. And the Eagles, the Broncos, the Bills, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, those are all of our teams. This is the first year since 1996 that they have all been in the playoffs together. The only other time it happened, the 1996, was 1989. This is the third time ever that it's happened. which I just thought that's a pretty cool,
Incredible
interesting
stat pool.
Yeah.
Incredible stat pool.
Interesting
That's nice.
stat, but let's get on to who actually made it. Of course, in the AFC side of things, Kansas City is the 1 seed. They're resting this week. The Bills sit at the 2. The Baltimore Ravens were the 3. Houston rounding out the division leaders at 4. Then the Chargers got the 5th. Pittsburgh was the 6th, and Denver was the 7th. So, of course, then we saw Buffalo facing the 7th seed Denver, Baltimore taking on their division rival Pittsburgh, and Houston taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. So I guess we should start at the top there, since that was the first game to play. Houston going against the Chargers, where the Chargers kind of got destroyed. I don't really know how else to say it. CJ Stroud and the offense didn't play well, but they didn't do what the Chargers did, which was absolutely implode. So I guess that's good enough in the playoffs.
I think, and you and I talked about it, Justin, I think prior to the game, is that we thought that would be... No, I don't think a lot of people would call the Chargers winning that game an upset, but a team going on the road and winning in the first round. I think a lot of people picked out the Chargers as a team that could do that. But like you said, their offense in that game just imploded. I mean, they were terrible. And well, I'll give to the Texans their credit. Their defense played very well down the stretch of that game. But Justin Herbert had a night to forget. He did not play well. 4 interceptions. A couple weren't his fault, but a couple just really bad passes. You can't turn the ball over and expect to win the postseason. That's the bottom line. I also think he only completed about 44% of his passes. You can't do that either as a quarterback in the playoffs. And ultimately, they suffered for it. And they could not come back from those turnovers and put up any sort of fight against the Texans in that second half.
Yeah, I think we're kind of all in agreement. That was just an uncharacteristic performance from Justin Herbert. I don't know if it was the lights were too bright, as the meme goes, but I mean, only 3 interceptions in the regular season. They said it on the broadcast, and 4 in the playoff game alone. That was shocking. I know the Texans had that big defensive performance against Jared Goff earlier in the season, but I mean that was shocking. And yeah, like you guys said, I think I was in the same boat. I thought, the Chargers, they had the momentum coming into the game. The Texans just kind of felt like they backed in. They were in a bad division. They kind of won it. And, I mean, they turned it up in the right time. They used the home crowd, the home momentum. But, yeah, shocking, the no pun intended, the way the Chargers kind of fell apart. And the Texans... playing up to the potential that I think a lot of people had coming into the season, but the regular season, it's been disappointing. It looks like CJ Stroud took a step back. They had, of course, those devastating injuries to Diggs and Tank Dell. Nico Collins was out for periods of the season as well, and the defense seemed like it took a step back. But, if they're getting right, this is the right time to do it, and kind of living up to, hopefully those expectations that many people had at the beginning of the season for.
Yeah, I will say the defense was strong in that game, and they say defense wins championships, so who knows? Maybe they've got a little bit of a spark going into the divisional round. But speaking of divisional, the next matchup was a divisional matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I will say that it was short-lived, that one stat that I brought up, because the Pittsburgh Steelers got eliminated in epic fashion, getting killed by the MVP candidate Lamar Jackson 2-time. It was just one of those games where they just started terribly. Like, offensively, they couldn't get anything going. It was 21-0 or 28-0 before they scored a touchdown. So, yeah, at that point, you can't expect to beat a team that can run it down your throat and has a perennial MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson.
The Steelers, that first half was horrible, and I think pretty much everybody saw how they were playing coming into the playoffs. On the back of 4 straight losses to end the regular season, the Steelers' offense had looked atrocious for most of those games, and I don't think anybody expected them to go into Baltimore and win that game. And divisional battle, you thought, maybe they'll have a chance. They'll bring up the best in them. But like you said, that first half, Justin, 21-0 at halftime was a score. Baltimore up at home. Like, you can't play a half like that and then expect to be able to recover from that. They tried. They put up a fight in the second half, the Steelers did. But ultimately, like you said, Lamar did his thing, and Derrick Henry, ran all over them. I think he had like 180 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. You can't really combat that. The 2 best rushers in the league, arguably. Obviously, Eagles fans would have something to say about that with Saquon, but you get the point. You can't let that happen and expect to win. The Ravens definitely the better overall team, and they're moving on because of it.
Yeah, I think that defense for the Steelers getting dissected in that first half of that game, and they had some signs of life in that third quarter. But I'm looking at that offense, and of course they put up a few touchdowns there in the third, but that first half, of course, you look at the defensive effort. But that is it. That has been a top 10 unit, and if they maybe got any kind of break with a sustained drive for that offense, maybe the Ravens don't get that many touchdowns, that momentum going into the half, and danger Russ Wilson looking like his Broncos days. I bet Nate was smiling a little bit watching a little struggle there from Russ Wilson. I mean, that was just he was showing his age. He was not making the check down throws. He was throwing it at guys' feet. The running game was not going, and Arthur Smith, just there was no creativity. And then you saw it in the second half. It's like, I'm sure Steelers fans, some of our friends here on the podcast, like, where was this all game? The touchdown to Pickens, the long passes to Mike Williams. I mean, where was that in the first quarter? You need that the whole game, especially against such a dynamic team with the Ravens. But the ceiling is high for this Ravens team. Such a dynamic duo. That defense is coming around. They're going to be a tough out moving forward.
It certainly wasn't the best showing for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but hopefully they can rebuild during this offseason, get a couple more of those key pieces that they're looking for.
They can stay on the sideline.
Well, Nate thinks they can
we
stay
don't
on the
need
sideline.
we don't need to see him back. we don't need to see him back.
Speaking of teams on the sideline, the Denver Broncos took on the Buffalo Bills today, and Nate's smile from last night quickly diminished as the Bills were able to defeat them pretty handily in that home environment. Now, I'll be honest, as a Bills fan, the first half of this game was terrible. I hated it. It was awful. The first drive, they launched this ball right over Taylor Rapp's head for the touchdown. I was so mad. I mean,
That was a beautiful throw.
Nate, you should have been there. I was so upset.
I wish I could have.
And then we kind of bring it back, get to around 10 points, and Will Lutz misses a kick for halftime, kind of shifting the momentum a little bit, but it was anybody's game till the third quarter. And then at that point, Josh Allen said, listen, Lamar Jackson's good, but he's not MVP good. I'm going to win this game. And what does he do? On a 4th and 1, he throws a touchdown pass to the back of the end zone, Ty Johnson, and that was it. After that, it was all Buffalo. Denver Broncos couldn't do a single thing. They're a great team. They're young. They played well, but they can't beat an elite team like the Buffalo Bills at this point. But it was great to see them back into the playoffs, and I look forward to seeing what they can build next year.
Yeah, I think you pretty much, hit the nail on the head there, Justin. A very competitive first half of the game. Denver came out firing, as you said. Great way to open the game on the first drive. Beautiful throw from Bo Nix under pressure. He took the hit, delivered the ball. Then they kind of stalled out. Buffalo, to their credit, has a great defense. They showed up after that drive, played very well. 10-7 at half, should have been 10-10. Unfortunate kick off the post. Like you said, shifts momentum a little bit going into halftime. You're already on the road, but being down as opposed to being tied, it's just a different mindset. Came out in the third quarter, and they couldn't stop the Bills' offense. Like you said, Josh Allen flipped the switch. He turned it on. He is that dude. There's no surprise there. And like I said to you, I think I mentioned to you, Justin, that the Bills were also able to run the ball very effectively in the game today, which is a credit to their O-line. They won the line of scrimmage, and Denver just couldn't get anything going offensively in that second half at all. And that was that. But as a Broncos fan, just to wrap it up real quick, it's been since 2015, the Super Bowl, that they've been to the playoffs. First year, rookie quarterback Bo Nix, 10-7 season, getting in. It was a good feeling, good to see him back, and leaves room for a lot of optimism for the organization and the fans as a whole going forward. So I didn't have much expectations going into the game, but I was just happy to be there and looking forward to the future.
Yeah, a great, I guess, the fun story of the Broncos, I'm sure. Inside baseball here, of course, Nate and Justin, the fans of the team, both also Penn State fans. We'll get into that a little bit later on, who was going to have a better weekend other than the other one. Justin ended up being that person. But, looking at the game, like you said, that first half was kind of back and forth. I thought, after that first Broncos drive, I was like, man, this is going to be like a 34-31, shootout coming down to the end. But the Bills' defense really settled in, and you could see some nervousness in there for Bo Nix. He wasn't throwing interceptions, but Sean McDermott and that defense did a great job of, disguising stuff on the back end. He was just kind of indecisive on making throws. There were some drops, too, with, Cortland Sutton, some passes just going right through guys' hands that I thought that he put it there. Guys just needed to make the plays. But, yeah, I think, point that Nate brought up there at the end, the running game for Buffalo, I think that's something that they prided themselves on in the regular season. They had some games with Josh Allen, the 6-touchdown performance where it seemed like he put the team on his back. But being able to have that complementary football opens it up for him running the football, opens it up for play action down the field with the tight ends, the wide receivers. So, I mean, if they can continue to do that, of course, we'll get into the matchup here in a second with another daunting task and a team that runs the ball so well in their own right. But, a dominating performance and one of the best teams in the league, showing why they're one of the best teams in the league with that big win.
Yeah, it's as you say, that running game is so important. In the first half, that's kind of what they built on, and in the second, it opened up the passing game. But before we go to the matchups of next week, let's just continue with what's going on the rest of this weekend in the NFC side of things. Kicking off today as well. Detroit got the 1 seed there. Philadelphia sits at the 2. Tampa Bay got the 3rd seed, and the Los Angeles Rams in the 4. They're going to be against Minnesota, who got the 5. Washington squeaked out that 6, and Green Bay at the 7. But there was only one matchup that's gone on so far. The others are either currently playing or play tomorrow. So we'll talk about that one matchup, which was the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Green Bay Packers. Jacob, you sent me a text earlier saying that I was going to be the happiest one here, which I think is true, but still I said, listen, it depends on what happens. And in that 4:30 matchup, you guys ended up taking down Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Although, to be fair, I think Jordan Love kind of took himself down. It is what it is. The Eagles did not look the best on offense, but their defense looked like a championship team. So I think that they're going to be able to build on that. And whoever they play next week, I think they're going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, I think I can take it from there. Yeah, of course, that text, that was kind of, I think it was early in the first half. The Eagles were up 10-0. I think at that point it was just like, that offense was just uninspiring football. I mean, that could have been over by the first half. I think that, they left a lot of points on the board, a few an interception, the Darius Slay interception, as Nate is celebrating, as we're also, keeping tabs on the game we'll get to in probably in just a second. But going back to the Eagles-Packers, that Eagles defense, I think, has been such a revelation this year and talked about, as a main reason for the Eagles' success and bounce back from the collapse last year. I mean, the pressure that they put on Jordan Love, and while he didn't help himself with some of those throws and some of those decisions moving outside the pocket, you could see the pressure affecting him, you could see the play in the back end affecting him, and of course, as receivers go down towards the end of the game, Jaden Reed goes out. He didn't have Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. We're hoping the health for those guys first and foremost. But that Eagles defense was impressive. I think that's a defense that can go all the way. But that offense is concerning. That pass game is concerning. Only one catch for 10 yards for a top 10 wide receiver in the game, even closer, depending on how you can argue it, in A.J. Brown. I mean, Saquon has eclipsed over 100 yards. He had to work for it, though. I mean, that's a game that they could have won by 20-plus points, and it could have been similar to the other games we saw. So, offense is concerning. A win is a win in the playoffs, but got to clean up some things moving forward. And I guess on the Packers side, just mistakes, injuries, mistakes. The penalties, the turnovers, that's what hurt them. And saw it throughout the season. They beat teams that were below 500, and they struggled against really good teams like the Vikings, the Lions, and the Eagles. So, regroup, get healthy, and maybe make some additions, and I think they'll be right back there next year.
Yeah, I mean, I really have nothing to add to that, Jake. Like you said, this is probably disappointing for Green Bay fans, just with the play of Jordan Love tonight, I'd say. But injuries definitely hurt them down the stretch and in this game. The Eagles' defense, that's the bright spot for Eagles fans to look at. They played really good tonight, and they look like, they're championship material. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how they perform moving forward. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely a team to be reckoned with in the NFC.
Yeah, no, we can't really say anything else about really the matchup for next week, so I'll just go over quickly what we know. The Commanders and Buccaneers are currently facing each other now. It is halftime, and I wish I could say, oh, well, maybe we can speculate on which side it's going to be what, but the Buccaneers just scored a touchdown, Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans, so it is currently tied at 10-10. I have no idea who's going to win that one. All I can say is the Commanders are receiving, so maybe that means that they'll score first.
Who knows?
Yeah, so that one's anybody's game. And, of course, there's the Vikings and Rams, which the Vikings have the much better record, but they did get beat by the Rams in the regular season. So who knows? That's another one. I don't know. So NFC side of things can't really speculate too much.
Yeah, and before we continue, I just want, for all of us to send our thoughts and prayers to all of the families in Los Angeles and California, dealing with the effects of the wildfires and the devastation. We all send out our thoughts and prayers. I don't want to, speak for everyone, but we're all thinking of everyone there, and of course, kind of leading into that conversation for the game between the Rams and the Vikings being played in Arizona as a result of the devastation. But, of course, first and foremost, thoughts and prayers and thinking of all those people affected. So, continue, Justin. Just thought it was a proper time to, make that.
It was an appropriate time. Thank you, Jacob. This is why you're the host. All right, but since we can't really say much more on the NFC side of things, we'll leave that there. And we'll go more so towards the AFC's divisional round, which we have the full slate. And we'll start with the Texans and Chiefs, guys. Two teams that won their division. Obviously, that's all that's left in the AFC side of things. Division winners 1 versus 4. Texans looking good at certain points in the season. Injuries, of course, plaguing them. The Chiefs being dominant the entire year, only really losing one meaningful game all year. So it comes down to who's gonna win this one. I think I'm gonna ask for predictions. Let's go with that. I think it's tough to pick against Patrick Mahomes at home in Arrowhead, even if he's not played in a couple of weeks. I think that he's just too good in the postseason, and I think that the refs are certainly going to be throwing a couple of flags his way. So I think that despite the Texans maybe making a push here, the Chiefs are going to get this one done at home. I
would lean in agreement with you there, Justin. I think the Texans' only real hope have a defensive performance similar to last night, and they kind of have to hope that Mahomes and some of the other Chiefs starters are just rusty simply because they haven't played in a while, which is honestly unlikely considering a player of his caliber. I don't see himself letting himself dip like that, especially at home in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs as well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs, too. I think it will be closer. I don't know if I'm just a believer in the rust, just because it's not only... They didn't even play the last week of the season, so we're talking about essentially 3 weeks since they last, played a game, and there was even, of course, some, close games in the regular season where it came down to a final play. So, even though we might be looking at, of course, the Chiefs on paper, a better team, they had a better regular season, they're at home, I'm still, thinking it's within that 7-point margin, either 7 points or in. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Maybe it is, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like it's going to come down to the fourth quarter. We're talking a little bit before we started the podcast about, how we think it will play out with this Chiefs team, but I'm picking the Chiefs, as sad as it is, as upset as I am.
Yeah, I think you're right about that one-score margin. They haven't really been in games that haven't been one-score margins, except for the one that they lost. So, yeah, but speaking of the one they lost, the other matchup is going to be the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens in Buffalo. This one, I was really hoping that the Steelers could pull something out, but they didn't, so it's a tough matchup. The Baltimore Ravens did defeat us in the regular season, but that was in Baltimore. So, who knows? Maybe we can get this one. I, of course, have to go with my team here. I think that Josh Allen can win this game if the defense keeps Lamar Jackson contained and keeps Derrick Henry's numbers in reasonable margin. It doesn't have to.
Was that around 100 yards?
Yeah, about yeah.
Yeah.
If he's about 100 yards, then I think that it's to be a close game. I don't think that's unfair to say. We have a great offense, so I think we can win a shootout, and it's going to come down to who can make the better plays, and I'm hoping that Josh Allen can make those better plays.
Justin, I'm going to agree with you here. I just like Buffalo at home. I know they've had some trouble in the past, obviously, but there's just something about them. The way Josh Allen's playing this year, they seem determined, and don't get me wrong, it'll be a close game. It's going to be one of those tight, I think, higher scoring games. I think we all agree. That could very well come down to, one team getting a turnover or somebody making a critical mistake late in the game. It could very well come down to that. But I think the Bills will eke it out at home with that, amazing fan base of theirs behind them. But by no means would I be surprised if Baltimore was able to pull the upset purely because of the offensive talent they have, with Henry and Lamar. But I'm going with Buffalo.
Yeah, and of course, who knows if Zay Flowers is going to play for the Ravens. He wasn't able to play for the Steelers game. That adds a whole nother. They clearly didn't even need him in that game. But yeah, I mean, could have helped. But I mean, I'm talking, that Steelers game where they were so well offensively, anyways. But yeah, such a tough matchup here. I mean, I think it's going to come down to who can contain the quarterback, the threat to run better. Of course, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, I think all of us can agree they're the two best running quarterbacks in the league, what they're able to do outside of the pocket and making plays with their legs. I think I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with the home side. If anything so far in these matchups has taught us anything, that home side, that home crowd, home momentum gives you the edge. The Bills Mafia is going to be, ruckus for that game. It's going to come down to the end, but it's something special with Buffalo this year, and Justin holding the receipts high and dry as we started this segment, and I think it leads to an AFC Championship berth at the very least.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the quotes really made you guys learn your lesson there.
And we might be wrong, and the Ravens might upset, and but we're holding the Bills. We're picking the Bills with you, Justin.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right, speaking of the film room, speaking of some more football on more football, it's college football. Guys, last time we were talking about the new playoff format. We were talking about, teams that could make a push into the new format, a little bit of our thoughts. Well, the format is here. The teams have here. We've had all the matchups through the holiday, through the new year, and some surprise here at the end. The 7 and the 8 seed facing off in the national championship, to some disappointment, some upset, some just perplexed fans in central Pennsylvania and beyond about some of these results. But Ohio State against Notre Dame in the championship game. But just a little bit of a recap before we dive into it. Just the bracket, how it played out. They had the 4-team bye, the conference champions. You had Ohio State beating Tennessee in the first round, Penn State taking down SMU in round one. Then going the second round matchups, just kind of quick review here. It was Oregon, Ohio State. It was Texas against Arizona State, Boise State, Penn State. And what was the final? Notre Dame and Georgia. Doing a review here without the bracket in front of me. Forgive me, guys. But moving forward, you get Ohio State with the huge upset against the undefeated Oregon, and not just a huge upset. They kicked the crap out of them to move on. Notre Dame.
I got something to say about that, but we'll keep going. We'll
continue the recap. Notre Dame taking down Georgia with the backup quarterback, Gunnar Stockton in there. Penn State taking down Boise State to move on. And then you had Texas in a absolute classic, taking down Arizona State to move on. And just a few days ago, this past week, it was Penn State, Notre Dame in a matchup to end all matchups for our friends, family alike, matching up against one another. And then Ohio State and Texas, and in heartbreaking fashion, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish take down the Penn State Nittany Lions 27-24 to move on to the final, and Ohio State 28-14 taking down Texas to set up the 7-seed, 8-seed championship game. Nate, the floor is yours after that revamped recap of the first 12-team playoff in college football.
Where do I start? There's a lot that you could address with this year's playoff. Let's just put it that way. As you've said, the first year of the 12-team playoff, which has been welcomed by most fans. I mean, I think it was the right move to go expand it from 4 teams. Going to 12 was nice. As we saw, and as you said in the first round, no really competitive matchups across the board in that first round. Pretty much every game was a blowout. I guess you could say with the exception of Clemson, Texas. Honestly, kind of a shame, but at the end of the day, every home team won. And I think you'll see a pattern here as in the second round, every team that got a bye lost to every single one of those teams that played a home game in the first round. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the seeding needs fixed. I think it comes down, it's simple as that. The seeding, the way they did seeding for this playoff, it was horrible. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Oregon, as you know, I'm a Penn Stater through and through, but Oregon is right there, second favorite team. I've loved them since I was a child. They beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game to stay undefeated, to earn the number 1 seed, and they did it rightfully so. It just baffles my mind then that they are put in a situation where Ohio State and Tennessee have to play them, where Penn State, who lost, gets SMU and then Boise State because Boise State got a bye. And I'm all for teams from these conferences getting into the playoffs, but do they also deserve a bye? That's where I draw the line. I think the byes need to be reserved for the top 4 teams unequivocally. In the rankings, if you are 1 through 4, you get a bye. Boise State won the Mountain West. They should get into the playoff, but they do not deserve a bye just because they got into the playoff. Not just because they won the Mountain West. Not every conference is made equally. It's just a fact. So Boise State, Arizona State, both deserve to be in, but I truly don't believe both deserve to get byes. I think it threw off the whole seeding of things. And you just, like I said, you saw how it played out with the teams and with the games that happened. Oregon, they weren't ready for Ohio State. Ohio State got right in that game against Tennessee after the crushing defeat to Michigan at the end of the year. They came in hot, and Oregon just wasn't prepared. But I truly don't believe that matchup should have been in a second round setting. I think that was better placed as a semifinal. And, it is what it is. Just moving on quickly then to the semifinals that we ended up getting. Heartbreaking for Penn State. Yeah, I know, Justin, you have some thoughts on the game, but you can't end a game like that. It hurt. It really, I can't blame Franklin. A lot of people say big game James. I don't think you can blame him as a Penn State fan for this one. Unfortunately, I think it falls on the quarterback. You can't make that throw late in the game, and it's unfortunate. And now I'm in a nightmare scenario where Ohio State and Notre Dame are playing for the national championship. So, yeah, the seeding needs fixed, and Penn State, they blew it this year. Simple as that.
I think you make some good points. You say that you can't blame Franklin, and to an extent, I agree with you. I think that last drive especially, they should have played better. That was Drew's fault there on that throw. He should have made a better decision. But throughout the game, I wasn't a huge fan of the play calling, so some of that is on Franklin, I do think. But yeah, we had it close going in there, and we had a chance to come out of Hard Rock with a win, and we had some bad play on defense the series before, and then, of course, the interception to seal the game. So it was a disappointing end to a season that gave us a lot of hope in Happy Valley, so it was hard to see. And I think that when you talk about the playoff bracket, you're right. It does need to be improved. I believe you're right with the 1-4 should get the buys, but more than that, maybe they could also change it to make it more like the NFL too, to where the lower seeds have to play the higher seeds to ensure that the better seeds tend to make it to the end to get those more exciting matchups.
Yeah, I think you guys bring up some important points. I'll touch on kind of the Penn State game, watching along. My dad was an alumni, so I have some, ties and some fandom going to games and such. And that was just, watching the Ohio State, Penn State, we discussed that on this show as well. It's very kind of similar, where there were moments where Penn State could have extended the lead. There were mistakes from Riley Leonard where even it went out of the game, and they were able to kind of get points at the end of the half, and they just let him hang around. That was as simple as that, and the decision-making late. I mean, that's... like you said, that's a pass that Drew Aller just can't make. Across his body, throwing against the grain in tight coverage. That's a pass he can't make, and, Notre Dame came out victorious. It sounds like Drew Aller's going to be coming back now. So, I mean, hopefully he can use this and fuel this as motivation for next season. But just a disappointing loss when... it was right there for the taking. And Nate mentioned the matchups that they had. SMU, Boise State took care of business. And another game against Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that has battled injuries. Jeremiah Love in and out of that game, struggled at times to get the run game going. They really, didn't have a true number one receiver. I mean, Faison was getting some catches in there, but, no kind of game breaker like a Jeremiah Smith. So, I mean, that was their chance, and I don't know how many more chances, years like that, they're going to have. But going back to the playoffs, speaking of other teams having, chances, Penn State included moving forward, yeah, and, I was kind of thinking while we were talking, I know the wrapping it, going all the way back to baseball, because I know that's also been a conversation in Major League Baseball with the seeding and the buys and the teams just being, not unprepared, but just, that momentum picks up real quickly, and teams on a roll can just ride that momentum throughout. So, yeah, and the whole conversation with the SEC as well. You see Lane Kiffin, the Ole Miss coach, tweeting, sending out tweets like, oh, Alabama should have made it. The SEC's the best. I think there's some truth to that, but that goes into the conference balancing, and I think they put too much into the conference championships. It wasn't enough in previous years. Now it's too much. You got to find that middle ground. I think that might be the best solution, but they're going to have to try and tinker with it. It's year one, but you gotta maybe find some more balance in there.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Jake. I mean, they gotta find balance, and hopefully, I don't know if they'll adjust it this offseason, but I think that regardless, we're heading for an even more expanded playoff a couple years from now. There have already been talks of going to 16 teams. Would not shock me if 2 or 3 years from now we are at that stage where it is 16-team playoffs. So, yeah, hopefully they learn from this year and make the proper adjustments. And yeah, that's really all I have to say on the playoff. I guess we'll do maybe some predictions for the championship game.
That's exactly where I was going. Predictions. Nate says he is absolutely dreading this matchup, but let's pick it anyways. Notre Dame, Ohio State, 7-8 seed in the championship game coming up on the 20th of January. Guys, what are we feeling here in these two kind of middle-seeded matchups that have caught fire? Ohio State, a little bit more of a tougher path, as we mentioned, taking down Tennessee, taking down Oregon, dismantling Texas on their way, where, Notre Dame took down a hampered Georgia squad, took down Indiana. There was debate, of them getting in, and of course, edging out Penn State in their most recent game. That's the path, guys. What are we thinking here?
Nate, when you said nightmare matchup, that brought back some bad memories for me, because I do know exactly the feeling you're talking about. I'm taking you back to 2017, the Super Bowl matchup between my least favorite team and my second least favorite team. That's the Philadelphia Eagles and the Patriots, the New England Patriots. So I get that feeling completely of, oh man, I hate both these teams so much. I do not want to pick either of them to win. But you got to make the most of those situations and root for the team that's just slightly less hated. In that instance, it was Philadelphia. But if I'm being real with myself, if I was going back to that moment, I would not have picked them to win that game. So I cannot pick the team that I wish I could pick. This time I'm going with Ohio State. I think they have the better team, the better coaching staff, the better everything. I think they're a better unit. I think they're going to win this game, and potentially by more than one score.
Justin, I'm in agreement with you here, buddy. It is a nightmare matchup for me. I hate Ohio State with every bone in my body. I cannot stand them. On the other hand, I have notoriously been a Notre Dame hater, I guess you can say, for the pure fact that they have not played in a conference at all, and they pick and choose their schedule and are always on national television every year. And during the 4-team era, they would get in over, I think, teams that probably were better and should have been in. But here we are. They beat Penn State. They made it to the championship. I can't let my heart sway my pick. I think Ohio State wins, like you said, Justin. The more talented team. They're playing better football right now. I can't see them losing, and I would not be shocked if it was by more than one score, like you said, 2 touchdown plus margin.
It's like the meme, the coughing baby versus the hydrogen bomb. Like that's the situation we got going here. Yeah, and a bad beat too. I was talking with another friend. We were kind of going through brackets and stuff. And yeah, I thought after that Michigan game, I thought, Ryan Day's job was on the line in that first matchup versus Tennessee. I thought that they would lose that game at home against Tennessee. That's how far I thought they were going, how far I thought they were going to play, and how bad, it was kind of going to end and blow up that way. But here they are, and I think I'm right along the same lines. I think Ohio State's going to win, and just the way they've been dismantling these teams, I think that they're going to do the same to a hobbling Notre Dame team that got there. I don't know how much gas they have left in the tank. So it's Ohio State team's going to go all the way. 2 redemption stories. Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois and getting all the way back. And, of course, Ohio State, that, wretched loss to Michigan at the end of the regular season and, going to the championship game. But I have Ohio State as well. So sweeping as well, guys. We're all in unison on these picks, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm going with Ohio State too. Notre Dame join a conference, actually win a conference championship. Oh wait, you can't. You're not in a conference. Let's go with Ohio State.
I guess Sam Betts is a hater too.
He is a hater. He is a hater. Well, I mean, all we can do, guys, is watch and see how everything plays out. Of course, in the NFL playoffs, in the college football playoffs, heck, in the rest of the MLB offseason, see who signs and changes teams. But that will do it. Another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast in the books. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for new episodes on YouTube. We've got a special anniversary coming up for the podcast. 5 years with these crazy dudes coming up. 5 years ago we started this, and I'm super excited to keep it going. So stay tuned for more episodes coming up. Once again, thank you for listening and watching to another episode of the Lunch Hour Sports Podcast.